Hello, and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today, I'll be showing you how to cycle from Fulham in West London all the way out to Brentford. This ride takes just 30 minutes, and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes, partly thanks to new infrastructure that's just been built on Brentford High Street, which we're going to take a look at in this video. By public transport, the same journey takes nearly an hour and requires multiple changes of line, so cycling is the obvious way to make the trip. If you find this video useful, or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, then you can find a link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Fulham Road next to the Brown Cow pub, and we're going to duck down Ross Trevor Road. The first section of this video uses reasonably quiet streets to get out of Fulham town centre and onto a nice quiet riverside route. Although space is a little bit tight here with parking on both sides of the road, the streets are generally pretty quiet thanks to closures like the one ahead with that fire gate which prevents traffic from using it as a through route. As well as that closure at the end of Swift Street which we cycled through, there's also another one at the end of Coal Hill Lane which we're on now. That also keeps this street nice and quiet. I've used a version of this little route to get out of Fulham before in previous videos, but one change I've made this time is that I'm actually going to turn right down Kimball Gardens rather than continuing over Coal Hill Lane. The reason I'm doing that is that we're going to have to cross Fulham Palace Road in a minute, and doing so at the end of Coal Hill Lane isn't very comfortable because the streets don't really line up properly and you have to go on the busy road for a second. So instead we're turning onto Gowan Avenue and we're going to cross Fulham Palace Road here where the streets line up properly into Doneraile Street. Ideally there would actually be a signalised or zebra cycle crossing to get over that street, as it is a little bit busy and you do have to wait some time for a gap in the traffic. But in the meantime, until infrastructure like that is put in, I think you're definitely better off crossing where we did there at Gowan Avenue. In fact, in particularly busy times, if you're not a particularly confident cyclist, you've also got the option of dismounting and using the pedestrian crossing, which is just to the left of where we cross the road. When it comes to riding a bike, I don't think there's any shame in just doing what you feel most comfortable with. Once you cross Fulham Palace Road, the traffic levels really start to get very low indeed. Low enough that you'll see kids cycling in the street and people walking in the road, which is always a good sign that somewhere is safe and comfortable for people walking and cycling. For this next section of the video, we'll be riding a lovely riverside route past Fulham Football Club on our left and up to Hammersmith Bridge, all on very low traffic streets like this one, thanks to closures like this that we're going through now, which keep through traffic from using the streets. I've used this Fulham Riverside route before in videos on this channel, and one thing it's nice to see has changed is that it has now been adopted as an official TfL cycleway. So if you look at that green and blue sign up ahead on the left, that says it's now Cycleway 34, and it'll point you in the right direction. Generally, I think that this extra wayfinding is incredibly helpful, as one of the downsides of the route previously was that it did have a few twists and turns around corners in it, and it could be a little bit confusing to remember which street to take. There were little blue signs before, but these ones are much more prominent, and I had no problem following the route without checking a map, even though I haven't been down here for about a year or so. Of course, in case anybody gets the wrong idea, while the wayfinding is useful, it doesn't itself make a cycle route. The reason that this is a good cycle route is because there's no traffic on it. The reason there's no traffic on it is because of modal filters and closures, like the ones we just went through. There are still some councils who think they can put up a cycle route sign and call something a cycleway without making any further interventions. But people have been trying that since the 1980s and it doesn't work. You either need to eliminate through traffic, as has been done here, or provide protected space for cycling on main roads. Just a reminder, by the way, that while the wayfinding on here is excellent, if you do prefer to use a map of this route, then you can download one in the link in the description below the video. I've uploaded the map to a website called Komoot, and you can download a GPX file from that website and use it on whatever app or device you like. It's a standard format which should work on pretty much everything. One advantage of the map is that this video does knit together various different official cycleways and unofficial routes as well, especially at the beginning, and with the map you get them all. Now, the new build housing on our left is on the site of the old Hammersmith distillery. While this seems to have initially been a branch of the Hague Whisky Distillery from Scotland, by 1910 it was only producing industrial alcohol, so probably not anything that you'd want to actually drink. The distillery had been built on the site of an old stately home called Brandenburg House, which was constructed in the early 17th century by Sir Nicholas Crisp, hence Crisp Road, which we're on now. Crisp was a merchant who enriched himself in the West African slave trade. Much later in Brandenburg House's history, the building became the residence of Queen Caroline, the estranged wife of George IV, hence Queen Caroline Street here. After she died, the king had the house knocked down. They were not on good terms. Now, we've broken from Cycleway 34 now, and I'm going to briefly cycle down the riverside here. You are allowed to cycle on the riverside. It can get a little bit busy, but as long as you take it slow and are considerate of pedestrians, I think that little 10-second cut through is the best way to get to Bridge View. From here, we've got a straight run on quiet back streets up across the A4 and under the Hammersmith flyover. Do note that these two different sets of traffic lights can be green at different times, so don't just race across them. Ignore that arrow pointing you left there and just continue straight up Bridge Avenue, taking care as there is a car park here, so there could be cars making manoeuvres and backing out of spaces without looking. When you get to King Street, make sure you watch for traffic from your right and then pull across the road into this two-way protected cycle lane. These lanes are part of Transport for London's Cycleway 9 route. Eventually, Cycleway 9 will run all the way west to Hounslow. It's not quite there yet, but it has just been extended to Brentford High Street, which is where we're going to take it to today. The vast majority of Cycleway 9 is built on high quality protected cycle lanes just like this one. The latest extension that was just completed is an absolute game changer for people getting to and from Brentford by bike. TfL and Hounslow are building the route in stages all the way to Hounslow town centre. Now that the section to Brentford is completed, they're consulting on the Brentford to Syon Park section. You should definitely respond to the consultation to let them know it's a good idea. I'll make sure that I include a link in the description below the video so people can find it. What I think is interesting about the next section to be built is that it won't just open up links to Syon Park, it'll actually also open up a relatively decent route to Twickenham, which is a pretty big town centre and important to connect to West London's cycle network. Obviously, when that all opens, I will make videos showing off the routes, and I'm excited to show it to you guys when it opens. Do make sure you hit subscribe on the channel so that you're alerted to new videos as I post them. Now, this is a great cycle lane, but there are a few things that you need to watch out for on it. One is the pedestrian zebra crossings to the bus stops, and another are traffic lights like this one. I did pause to let this guy across and then kind of fell off my bike, so that's a shame, but I got back on it and we keep going. The other thing to keep an eye on is also the side roads which run from the high road across the cycle lane. Now, in theory, you do have priority over those side roads, and most of the time in practice you will as well. But sometimes drivers will just turn across you into the side roads without looking. So just be careful as you approach. And if there are signals on a side road, do make sure that you obey those as well. Now, I filmed this video on a weekend, and the thing that really stood out to me as I cycled down Chiswick High Road was the markets on the left here. They look so lively and fantastic, and I was surprised to learn, because I'm not really that familiar with this part of London, they're actually a relatively recent innovation. They look like they've been here for a while, but the antiques market only goes back to 2021, and that was when the council, Hounslow Council, started getting serious about reclaiming public space from cars. A new cheese market was also started in 2021, and a flower market in 2020, pretty much at the same time as we got this brilliant cycle lane. The markets tend to replace car parking when they are in session. You hear a lot about how high streets are dying all over the country, but if you make them places that people want to spend time in rather than car parks, then they tend to do pretty well. Now, although most of Cycleway 9 is on protected lanes like this, the section up ahead is actually on a quieter street riding on the carriageway. I say quieter because I don't think it's quite as quiet as it could be. There still are routes for through traffic down here on Heathfield Terrace and also on Wellesley Road, which we get to further up. As you can see, this isn't super busy, and we largely have the streets to ourselves, and there are plenty of people riding on the carriageway here, but at busier times of day, like in rush hour on a weekday, this can get a little bit busier. It's still not what I would class as a busy road, but it's probably not quite at the level that I think a cycleway should aspire to. So I think it would make a lot of sense to stick a bus gate somewhere on Wellesley Road just to prevent cars from using it as a through route. Wellesley Road actually runs parallel to two other A roads at this point. There's the A4 and the A315, and it's not really clear to me why there needs to be a third route for drivers to bypass queues on those other roads. As well as improving the cycling environment on here and road safety and making things quieter for residents, I also think it's just a shame to build a fully protected cycle lane pretty much all the way from central London and soon out to Hounslow, only to leave a small gap in it. So yeah, let's get a bus gate on Wellesley Road if anyone from Hounslow Council is watching this. That would work with the existing intervention on Wellesley Road. You can see these no through route signs just here past the mini roundabout. They indicate that Wellesley Road has actually been closed to motor traffic at one end. It's the western end which we're approaching, and past those signs this section of Wellesley Road is actually already filtered and already doesn't have any through traffic on it. It's just the earlier section which needs sorting out, and if we brought the whole street up to this level of quietness, it would be a fantastic cycle route. Now we are back on a protected cycle lane as we approach Kew Bridge. We're not going to be going over Kew Bridge today, but we are going to be going on Kew Bridge Road. There's a really nicely done cycle crossing here getting us over the road at Kew Bridge. Do make sure that you're paying attention to the cycle traffic lights, not the other ones. And also make sure that you give way to people trying to get to the bus stop over those zebra crossings. On the right here, there's actually a route up Green Dragon Lane which can take you to South Ealing. I've used that in other videos, but we're going to keep going straight towards Brentford. Now, this is a two-way cycle track at this point, but it does change into what we call with flow cycle tracks. So on this side of the road, we're traveling in this direction. On the other side of the road, it's the other direction. There's actually a crossover there, so when you're going in the other direction, you have to wait for a traffic light to join the two-way track, but we didn't have to do that this time. Now, to save space, in this direction the cycle lane runs through Waterman's Park. In the other direction it is on the carriageway with protection, of course. I'll show you that lane in the opposite direction in a future video, but on this one, generally it's not considered best practice to run a cycle route through a park, as not everyone likes cycling through parks at night. This does look really pleasant today, and it was a great ride, and to be fair, there are lots of street lamps here, so it should be relatively well lit. Similar setups in other parts of London have caused problems though, so if anyone lives locally and knows what it's like to cycle at night through there, do let me know in the comments below. Overall, I can see why they decided to route through the park though, given the constraints on space, and certainly for most users it's going to be great most of the time. We're back on the street, and this section is the most recently opened bit. It looks a little bit on the narrow side, but actually those curbs that run alongside the road are actually pretty thick and flush with the cycle track, so the lane is actually quite a bit wider than it looks in the video, and it was always reasonably comfortable to cycle down. This is the end of the latest bit, and we stop in front of a large sign saying Brentford, so I think it's probably fair to say that we've made it to Brentford. I can't wait for the next section to open to Syon Park and link down to Twickenham. Do make sure that you respond to the consultation, which I've linked below in the description, and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel so you see videos of new routes just like this one when they go live. I do keep on top of all the new cycle routes that open in London, and I make sure that I put them in videos when they do. Let me know in the comments what you thought of that. I thought that the Brentford extension is absolutely worthwhile, and it's going to be fantastic when it goes all the way to Hounslow as well. I think I can figure out a route which will get you from Heathrow into central London, which will be fantastic, although perhaps not super practical given how difficult it is to bring a bike on a plane. Maybe if you work at the airport though, that could be another matter. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hit subscribe. Thank you so much to everyone on the Patreon as well. If you would like to contribute too, there's a link there. And do like the video as well to help other people find it. And I'll see you in the comments below. Goodbye.